Okay, so Parshas Yisro, here and there from. So it balances out a little bit what we learned in previous weeks. In other words, we emphasized a lot. We brought sources about the idea of Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad that was so necessary for Matan Torah. And the Shem Shmuel had said that the Iker, how do you take all these hundreds of thousands of people, millions even, and get them to be Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad? It had to be that the people had anova, that the people were humble. Oh, but the people also had to be strong. Right? They were strong because they were part of Am Yisrael. Not because I'm great, but because I'm part of something great. That was what we brought to. So it's a really beautiful unifying theme. But then we come to Matan Torah, and Matan Torah seems to be very divisive, very hierarchical, somewhat, okay, based on the following medrash. The Sifri, in Devarim, it says the following. It says, "B'Matan Torah hayelodim mechabdim es azkenim." In Matan Torah, you had yelodim doesn't necessarily mean children; it means the young people. They gave honor to the older people, right? V'hainu shim kol ha'achdus sheshara b'Yisrael. This is the Ozerov Rebbe again, by the way, the Ber Moshe. And I did look up the Rav who he gave his shul to was the Bluzhev Rebbe. When the Bluzhev Rebbe came from the Holocaust, he said what he went through. He should have a shul. I can't. That was so. So he said there was all the achdus in Yisrael. B'chol nonetheless, yodu kulam shechayavim lahavdil ben katan lagodo v'lo lahashvosam. Meaning, it's true. Everybody's one. Everybody's unified. But still, there are people that are gedolim, and you have to recognize them, and that's part of it, which is very important. That's not a contradiction to Achdus. Achdus doesn't mean everybody's the same. Achdus means that we're unified, okay? But they definitely recognized the great ones, and they gave them that derech eretz. Now, it was even built in. He says the Mechilta, according to the Girsa of the Vilna Gaon, Hashem told Moshe, "Ata oseh mechitza la'atzmecha, va'aron mechitza la'atzmo, hakohanim mechitza la'atzmom." Meaning, you got different seats to Matan Torah. Some people got at the 50-yard line. Some people got in the bleachers. Some people got, right, you had, and each one had to stay. Oh, good evening, Barry. Each one had to stay in this place. Va'om kol ikar al yaharsu. And the majority of the people, they had to stay back behind the line. They say, in the name of the Chidush Harim, he says, sometimes people think it wasn't fair because Chazal tell us that Hashem asked the different nations, do you want the Torah, right? The kids' favorite song there before Shavuos, and this nation said, what's in there? Lo tirtzach. They say, no, that's our natural culture, right? What does it say? Lo tinaf. No, we can't give that up. He says, so why didn't he ask Am Yisrael something that's hard for them? So they say, he did. You stand here and you have to stay in your place and not go someplace else. That's very hard for a Jew. He says,
yes, how much it costs.
Oh, that's
free, or two.
Oh, 2 tablets. Yeah. So so here we have mechitzas. A mechitza divides. Moshe Rabbeinu gets to stand here. Aaron HaKohen gets to stand there. Right? The Zakanim get to be here. We saw that Yoshua, interestingly, gets to go up beyond everyone else. He gets to go up with Moshe Rabbeinu. Rashi already told us about it before. It said in Mitzrayim, when Moshe Rabbeinu was going to Paro, so he went with the Zakanim. They were all going with him. And we see he was going there plural. But suddenly, it's only Moshe Rabbeinu there by Paro. Rashi says that the Zakanim nishmatu echad. While they're walking, one went off, the other one went off, etc. And it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, repaid them by Matan Torah, because it says Moshe alone is going to go up, and they have to stay back. Told the Rebbe, he said he heard from the Beis Yisrael, he said the way he imagines it, he said these Zakanim weren't just old men, because there were a great many old men in Am Yisrael. It's a very big nation at that point. It means, like we say, Zaken Zeh Kana Chachma. It says these were Talmidei Chacham Rosh Yeshivas, and Moshe Rabbeinu got them fired up. Let's go, and we have to lobby Paro to let everyone out. But as they're walking along, like one Rosh Yeshiva thinks, is this really befitting in my Kavod Torah, right? To go out there, the politics, go to the thing, this is for Askonim, right? And the other one decided that, and that left him alone. Okay, he says sometimes you have to do what's called askonos. You have to be involved. Okay, so now he brings a little remez, right here, a hint. He says, "Reda id ba'am," right, and this gets a lot of ink, so to speak, in Matan Torah. The idea: make sure everybody stands away from Har Sinai. If you touch the mountain, you die. Warn them again. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Yes, I told them what you said." Right? Al pen yarsu el Hashem liros. Don't break through these boundaries to come and see. Im yavu es hamachitzos shenoadu lekol echad ve'echad, he says, if you break through that boundary, which is designated for each person, yesh makom lachshos yashvu shekulam shavim. They're going to come and they're going to say, listen, everybody's the same. Everybody is experiencing this Matan Torah thing. So we're all the same. They won't have covered for the Talmud Chacham. And then, like he paraphrases it, he said, "V'nafal mimenu Rav." And then they won't have a Rav. They won't value the Rav anymore. Right? Now he says this was actually the time of Korach. He says, "Kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim," and in the Medrash, in the Tanchuma, it says, they all heard Matan Torah just like Moshe and Aaron. Right? Everyone was there. But what you have to realize is that each person heard it differently. Okay? So let's look at this message, which on one hand seems uncomfortable to us. Right? There's an idea, there's Moshe, there's Aaron, there's the Kenim, there's the Kohanim, there's different people here and there, and yet they're all unified because a person isn't as great as so-and-so, but he's still necessary. Okay? Meaning, if you say, okay, so if Moshe Rabbeinu got a bigger Kabbalah of Torah than anybody else in Am Yisrael, so what do you need the rest of Am Yisrael? Right? And if Aaron did, and if the Zakenim did, there's no such thing as that in Yiddishkeit. There's an expression in the Gemara, Bichlal Masayim Mona. 200 contains 100. Right? So, and I know guys in yeshivas sometimes suffer from this. One guy told me, he said he looked around in his yeshiva and he looked at the top guys and he said, everything I know, they already know, much better than me. Everything I will learn the rest of the year, they already know, much better than me. What am I doing here? The answer is, every individual has a unique chelik in Torah. Each person heard Matan Torah differently. It may not have been with the depth and the understanding of those Gedolim, but it's their unique chelik in Torah. No matter how that big the other person is, they can't do that. Okay, so, but just because you have a unique chelik in Torah doesn't suddenly mean you're Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the balance that has to be. Okay, so this idea of this structuring is very important for us. I once heard a very wise thing from Baron Lopiansky Shlita, the Rosh Yeshiva in Silver Spring. He said that he read a book on biology, and it was somebody, a professor was an expert in the cell. Okay, and cells have all sorts of stuff inside, little aspects of the cell. I learned about biology there. And he said he always asked his students, what's the most important component of the cell? And his answer was the cell wall. Every cell is contained by a wall. Without the wall, it all falls apart. It can't exist. It's not an entity. So the idea of walls, of mechitzas, are very important for Torah. Okay, those need to be held in order for the entire organism of Am Yisrael to work as it should. Just the examples of this idea that just because someone is great, he has to realize he can be missing something that someone else said. Rav Hutner said that people make a mistake when they compare the word in Hebrew, pashut, which means like simple, and murkav, which means complex, to katan and gadol, to small and big. He said that's not a good comparison. Because it's true, if I have a big bottle of Coca-Cola, it has everything that's in the small bottle of Coca-Cola. But something that is murkav, that is complex, is missing the maila of pashtus, is missing the maila of simplicity. He simply can't have it. And that is a tremendous maila. Am Yisrael many times has stood on the shoulders of pashtus. The most famous example is brought down by the Chosid Yavitz. The Chosid Yavitz was one of Megurashei Sfarad. He was one of those who was sent out in the Inquisition. And he wrote down his experiences. And he wrote that at the time they were in Spain, there were basically two general social groupings of the Jews. There were the Jews who were more educated and more wealthy, and they were educated both in Torah studies and in general knowledge. They were much more mixed in and successful in Spanish society. Right before, right, the church started making those problems, it was this golden age. It was doing very well. And then there were other simpler Jews, he said, more ignorant, both in Judaism and in the general knowledge. When the edict came out to convert or to leave, he said it was those more sophisticated Jews that came up with the idea, perhaps we can convert on the outside and still keep up our Judaism in secret. The simple Jews started packing their bags. And you ask them, where are you going? Out, right? Why? How are you going to live? We don't know, but they said, if you're going to be here, you have to be a Christian. We can't be Christians. We're Jews. We're going. Right? They say Rav Shach used to quote that often and say, you have to maintain your connection with those simple Jews because those are the backbone of Am Yisrael. There's the more complex you are, sometimes you start complexing yourself into all sorts of corners. So that's one example of this idea. Another example is something they say in the name of Rabbunim Pershischa. Rabbunim Pershischa once said, I'm jealous of the Shabbos of the butcher. And the Talmidim asked him, why are you jealous of the Shabbos of the butcher? He says, well, think about what the butcher does. His big time is at the end of the week. Wednesday, Thursday, even Friday morning, he's chopping up the meat, he's selling it, he's doing it. Then Friday, he has to run around and try and collect money from the people that didn't pay him during the week. He goes finally, to shul. Actually, he comes home, he sits down, and he says, oh, thank goodness it's Shabbos, right? He says, I've never had that experience. He said, I'm missing that one. Rav Fishel Shechter said his daughter teaches kindergarten, like a Hasidic kindergarten. So each kid, he gets to be a Shabbos Tati on Friday. So they say you're supposed to do like what your father does. So one kid came, like he made the kiddush very cute. Then he sits down and said, oh, Yabich gehat a voch. He said, yeah, what a week I had. Because that's his father's nusach, So he got... So again, there's power in that simplicity. And there's the importance that we have to realize. The mechitzas of Torah, this idea that Har Sinai was so fenced off, and we'll see in a second the continuation in the Beis HaMikdash also. So many restrictions, so many things, because that really is the aspect of kavod. Moshe Shapiro once gave us a fascinating example for kavod. There was a shir I used to go to with him, and it was in Bayit Vegan on Friday morning, and one year it was a heavy snow. So almost nobody came to the shir, unless they lived nearby. So I happened to go, and he came, and he said, let's talk about snow. So he pointed out that Sheleg is all of the threes, right? Gimel 3, Lamed 30, Shin 300. He said, the third Midah, which is like Tiferes, which is a mix, he says, of Chesed and Gvura, is also parallel to what's called Kavod. What we call Kavod. What is Kavod? He said, Kavod is like snow. Water rushes. Water runs. He says, ice is entirely frozen. Snow is in between. It's movable, malleable, but it's not running. It kind of holds its place. That's the idea of kavod. Kavod is this idea that you want to be very close to something, but the greatness that in fact makes you want to be close to it also makes you keep your distance and keep it in its particular place. So this is what Am Yisrael is being shown, that you have to have the kavod for the Torah as a whole, for the different aspects of Torah, the different people who have the different levels of Torah, and that doesn't take away from you because that's all part of you. So Rav Gustman Zatzal, Yisrael Zev Gustman, there was one time where a guy in his yeshiva, for whatever reason, was very clearly not standing up for him. Like, not just kind of he wasn't paying attention, but consistently. Rav Gustman would walk in to give the shir, the boys would stand up, he would sit. Yeah, that would be a good limit. So they said that Rav Gustman explained to him, he said, listen, he says, there's two things nobody can do to me. Nobody can give me kavod, and nobody can give me pain. He says, nobody can give me kavod because there was one time, Reb Chaim Moshe, right, he became a member of the Beis Din in Vilna at an extremely young age. Like, 19 years old, something like that. And the Beis Din in Vilna was the major leagues. And Chaim Moshe asked him to come to this meeting of Rabbanim, and for whatever reason he ran late. He came in, all the other Rabbanim were there. When he came in, Reb Chaim Moses stood up. The Chavetz Chaim was there. The Chavetz Chaim then stood up. He said, so don't think that I need your covet, okay? But he said, nobody can be Mitzayir me, nobody can give me pain because I saw my own son killed before my eyes. Okay, he says, I'm asking you to do this for you. You won't be able to receive Torah unless you have Kavod Torah. You have to have the honor for it, and that's part and parcel of Har Sinai. That's part of parcel of what was there. All of this, why so angry? Why are you not letting the people go up the mountain? Why each person has to be in their place? That is the cell walls of Torah that enable it to go and to listen. Right? And it's a key. They tell a famous story. There was a controversy about making an Erev in Flatbush, right, in other parts of Brooklyn. It was an Indian, and Moshe Feinstein was rather strongly against it. So they tell the story that there was a group of rabbis that did want to make the Erev, and they tended to be younger, less experienced rabbis, most of them. And one of them said in this meeting, with all due respect, Rabbi Feinstein's a rabbi, he says no, but we're rabbis and we say yes. So there was an older rabbi there, I believe it was Rabbi Solomon Sharfman, I believe it was, his father, Rabbi Sharfman there. He said, young man, how many dapim are there in Maseches Erevin? Didn't know, he says. Rav Moshe not only knows, he knows what's on all of them. He said, that's the difference, right? Meaning you do have to know these differences. Now again, I'll add in, forgive the digressions, we're going to get back into this in a second. They say that Rabban Kotler, when he started Lakewood, so he kind of shocked people because when he would try to raise money for it, they said, well, what's your program going to be? How many years to get smicha? I mean, he says, program is to learn, right? But for what? When did they get certified? Just to learn. And he said, why? He said, because you don't win a war with pistols, you win a war with cannons. He said, I want to produce cannons. Okay, but my little add-in to that is, a pistol is still a very useful thing, right? You can't carry a cannon in your pocket, right? It's true. A pistol is definitely not as powerful as a cannon. As long as the pistol knows he's a pistol, he can also be useful, okay? You just have to know where you are and who you are, what you can do and what you can't. Okay, now, this idea of the mechitzas, this idea of these separations and these boundaries, we can learn from the Beis HaMikdash that they were really there to connect. Okay? Now the Ramban, first of all, it's important to realize, it's kind of strange that Am Yisrael don't make a big deal about Har Sinai. Right? It used to be when more people went on Tiulim in the Sinai Desert, right, tour guides would say, oh, I can show you where Mount Sinai was. We really don't care. Which is very strange because the most significant event in Jewish history took place on there. But the idea is that it moved away. The Kedusha that was on Har Sinai, that was on that Gilui, all moved away. And the Ramban says, where did it go? It went with the Mishkan. He said that Mishkan kind of packed up the Torah revelation on Har Sinai. He says, Soda Mishkanu, the Ramban in the beginning of Truma, Shia Kavod Asher Shachan al Har Sinai, Shachan al Benistar. That same kavod which was revealed so much on Har Sinai will be dwelling in the Mishkan in a way which is hidden. Okay? Because it says, Vayishkon Kvod Hashem al Har Sinai. That was a Mishkan experience at Har Sinai. And the Mishkan says also, Kvod Hashem Moleas HaMishkan. Okay? So that is what's there. So we have to think, if we want to understand the mechitzas of Har Sinai, we also look at the mechitzas of the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. So I have here, this is a collection of Ma'amorim that Rabbi Yonasan David Shlita said on not on Tisha B'Av, before Tisha B'Av. He speaks every year to go through things. And here he started with this strange miracle that happened when Titus came into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, when he's destroying the Beis HaMikdash. He stabbed the parochas. And miraculously, blood started pouring out of the parochas. Okay, now, why is that done? And it's even referred to in the words in Eicha, Bitza Imroso. Imroso means like a garment. He split his garment, and that refers to the parochas. Now, and here he says that even though this was this great Chilul Hashem, and he rejoiced thinking, so to speak, that he killed. Yeah, so he said, but for Am Yisrael, it was showing them what they lost. It showed them that the parochas, which was this curtain dividing the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh, you don't realize what you had here. It enabled you to connect. It was a mechitza, it was a divider, but it was a living connection. And when that mechitza is gone, you've lost your connection. Okay, that's what's going there. He says, if you want to take a look, what is the task of a mechitza? On one hand, a mechitza, like the one we know in shul or wherever, is there to separate. But a mechitza, and he says perhaps is the main point of a mechitza, is that a mechitza enables you to make a connection. Okay, this classic example is the paroches. That what's in the Kodesh Kadoshim is beyond us. But the paroches enables us to have this transitional state between the Kodesh Kadoshim and the Kodesh that we can exist in and receive, right? And that's why it says in the Pasuk, Vivdila HaParoches lochem. The paroches wasn't dividing, so to speak, to keep you away, keep you out. It was there for you, to connect you, okay? That he gives an example. Just like in the world of thought, you can't access my world of thought, but I can put my thoughts into words, right? That separates them from the source where they are in the mind, but enables you to connect them, okay? You're not getting inside of me. That's someplace you can't go, but that's there, and that's why the paroch is called an imra, or dvir, all having to do with the statement, saying, or words. So this is the idea of the connection which is there in the Beis HaMikdash. Havdalah, right, the idea of separating is done with das, but connecting is also done with das. Meaning, Vayeda ha'adam es Chava ishto, right, and Adam knew his wife Chava, and they had children. Das means connecting. On the other hand, the bracha for Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos we put in Atochanin, because it says in the Gemara, Imein das Havdalah minayin. For people to be able to connect, for you to be able to connect to something, there has to be a divider, there has to be cell walls. Look, even among a married couple, if they don't have some form of privacy, if they don't have a sense of individual for each one, they can't really connect, right? They have to still be able to be themselves. There has to be something. I heard this once, I think it was this Rav Kvas, right? He said, why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put Adam to sleep when he took Chava and made her out of a piece of Adam's body? So I think he brings it, Rashi says, Shalot Tizgana Olav, that it shouldn't be like something disgusting to Adam Rishon, right? A piece of me was taken out and turned into you. So he learned from there, he says, what that shows is that each member of a couple deserves to have their privacy, right? Not every bad thing has to be shown to the other person. Not everything a person is able to, and this enables a person to connect. Okay, so the Beis HaMikdash, just like Har Sinai, had many places where people couldn't go. Kodesh Kodashim, only the Kohen Gadol could go once a year. Right? There were areas where only the Kohanim could go. There were areas for the Levim. There were areas where it depends if you're Tomei or Tahor. There were areas in which Goyim could come. Right? That was this barrier that the Yevonim hated. It says they broke it in 13 places, the Sareg, because Goyim would come to the Beis HaMikdash. Ki beisi beis tefillah yikari l'chol ha'amim. They would bring korbanos even. They could bring a korban olah, but they couldn't go beyond that point. Okay, now the point of this isn't to keep a person out. Sometimes people think when there's some type of barrier, that means you don't want me. Say, no, I want us to be able to connect and have the relationship. But that can only be there with those barriers. So this is there in every place where we have an obligation of kavod. Kavod of Torah, kavod of parents, right? It comes together with an idea of yira also, of a certain awe, certain things you're not supposed to do. You don't go into the Beis HaMikdash with your wallet, it says, with other things, with your walking stick. I believe, right? There's certain things, the way you do, the way you treat a place, even though it seems to be restricting and limiting, that enables you to connect to it the way it's supposed to be. If you're not treating it as it's supposed to be, so then it's not there. Then, if you put it on your level, if you turn the Beis HaMikdash into your living room, then it's not the Beis HaMikdash anymore. Right? You have to be able to do that. Rav Huda brought this as a mashal. He said it's very important, the idea of kavod of the Rav. Right? Kavod of the Rav, like in a shul, the idea of kavod, which some people think, okay, it's just a person like us. Why is it people are standing up? Or, in Hebrew, the third person thing goes much better. In English, it doesn't go. But that's also an idea of the politeness. So he said, in every town in Europe, you would have a clock on top of a high tower. He said, and people would look up to see the clock. He said, why didn't they put the clock at eye level where people could see it comfortably? He said, if they put the clock at eye level, everyone would look at their watch and then set the town clock to match their watch. He says, when it's up there, they have to set their watch according to the town clock, which is high up there. He says, you have to keep the Rav to that position there so that people will be synchronizing themselves to him as opposed to synchronizing him to themselves, okay, which has been a problem and a danger and sometimes in many different shuls. So here we've discovered that Matan Torah teaches us our whole relationship to connecting to things of Kedusha, right, to how we treat Talmidei Chachamim, how we treat a shul, how we treat the Mishkan, how we treat Har Sinai, and that idea of mechitzas and divisions, and even the mechitzas between different types of people enable us to connect. It's not there to tear us apart. That's the right way to supposed to be doing it. Cool, too.
Thank you.